I just have a couple of slides. Essentially, these are my personal experiences as far as the magazine as an environment is concerned. When I was a kid, I thought my mom was the best storyteller. But one day my heart broke because I realized that all her stories were actually borrowed or stolen, from this magazine, Dharmyog. I don't know how many of you in this market know about it, but it was something which was very, very popular way back in the 70s and the early 80s. And this was essentially how I got inducted in the environment of magazines. However, as I grew up, there were certain titles that played very important role in my overall development. When I came into the media environment, suddenly magazines became equal to numbers. I was told about all these jargon, circulation, readership, blah, 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 and I was actually not very happy. Because for me, magazines were something which were very, very engaging. It was content, it was something that I could delve deep into, spend time. And now suddenly I was evaluating magazines from a very, very, I would say, a very, very rational perspective where numbers had anything and everything to evaluate them. Then the next learning happened when, I was handling L'Oreal. And this was in 2003 as a professional. When L'Oreal entered the country, 50% of their budgets went behind these 3 titles. And this was the first year. And by no logic could you justify that. We as an agency used to go back to them and say, there is a possibility of spreading your money across X, Y, Z. What they used to say is, this is working. This is working. And way back in 2003, they said, or 2004, I think, they said this is working. I said, how? They said people or consumers actually bring the magazines and they show the shades to us, to the retailer saying that I want this particular shade. So the power of magazines in those days was also very, and this is my first learning as a professional on how magazines can do wonders for a particular brand. I mean, the way I personally evaluate magazines, there are these 3 spectrums of talk, think, and trust. Whenever you look at a communication, there's a talk communication where the company is just talking about its product to the consumer, a one-way communication. Then there is a think communication where there is an interaction that's happening. And finally, a trust communication, which is not in your or my control, but the consumers there are talking about your brand. And the best thing is that magazines as a medium are able to transcend across all 3 of them beautifully. But magazine is one medium, at least, where there was and is a possibility of scratch and sniff where you do an experiential sampling. And we did a lot of it in L'Oreal at that point in time because, sampling was a very, very important aspect. And something like sharing your product literature. You are actually bringing the consumer closer to the brand. It's the next step. It's not just an ad which is telling about your product to the consumer. It's something more than an ad. It's an experience about the product that the consumer is actually experiencing. And this is something which not every medium can do. And finally, trust, which is the most important domain today. Because any study you see, any category you see, any research that you see, everything says that today people are trusting other people's opinion more than the ads. And that's the power of social network, that's the power of interaction, that's the power of interactivity. And magazines play a good role here as well. I mean, tried and tested, advertorials. They play while we as a fraternity might be cynical and say, no, the consumer will understand there is a brand logo over there. But believe me, many consumers don't understand. And for them, this association is big. They think that there is a relevant environment in which the communication is happening. And they associate the 2 of them and say that this brand should be good. So it's a very strong trust domain as well. Something that we did, very simple thing. When Dettol hand sanitizer was launching, we took these belly bands, which is something that any brand does. But the communication over there said, are you sure this magazine is all that you have picked up? And then it actually opened into the page where you had the Dettol sanitizer and talked about, that you should be sanitizing your hands. Why is it not talk and trust? Because talk is just talking about your communication. Here you are building a huge amount of relevance through an through an interaction with the consumer, and that interaction was in the form of a belly band. Well, that is how I personally evaluate magazines. While numbers are important and we all look at numbers, but the way magazines would be built in a plan has to be beyond that.